This show could potentially predict or prophesize our near future.
I love it when you do it like that, when you walk out wearing nothing but. I love it when we do it like that, you know that I'm right there, want you to. You make it look so easy like that, then you try out my attention like.
Annyeonghaseyo, Daebak fam. Welcome back to Daebak Reacts TV, your front row seat to all things Korean entertainment, eats, travels, and of course, big Daebak energy. I do apologize for the extended delay in between uploads. I was incapacitated, not on purpose. I'm not trying to make excuses. Nonetheless, I'm back in action and here to give you some Daebak awesomeness. I recently watched another show. So as soon as I binged through LTNS, I moved on to the Defects. Now, this particular show was a shocker in terms of its concept and premise. I do understand it is widely popular in Korea. However, I am not entirely sure of its reach out here. Now, I'm pretty positive that my fellow K-drama fans and addicts would probably know about this show, but besides that demographic, I'm not sure how far it's extended out, whether it is a widely accessible show. However, I do know that it is a shockingly interesting concept. And before we get into the review and the story, I want to mention that this show could potentially predict or prophesize our near future. Ostensibly so, because of the way that it's been depicted and the way that the story unfolds. It is a potential future, and that is a scary fact. That being said, let's get into the review. Are you ready? 지금부터 showtime! Okay, the Defects. I will do us all a favor and not butcher the names of the actors and actresses in the show because I'm still learning about them. So I could tell you about one actor that I do know of. Well, didn't start off as an actor. I have seen him in a reality show both as a participant and a host, and now surprisingly as an actor. Of course, I'm talking about Dex. I don't know his Korean name. So let's talk about the show. So Dex is in this. It's a pretty interesting choice that he made with the character and how they've decided to cast him. All I can say without giving away the story is he plays as one of the antagonists. I would say his character choice is pretty badass. I'm not gonna lie. Now, I do have an affinity towards villains, not because I sympathize with them. Of course, I always support the underdog in any story. It's just when I see villains, I expect them to have this impact on screen to help me understand that they are the villain, that they are truly evil in most ways. With a shred, with an inkling of goodness in them, right? That you want that proverbial silver lining, so to speak, just as a hope that they might turn to the good side. Kind of like Darth Vader, my all-time favorite villain and antagonist in any movie, barring none. But I would say that this character that Dex decided to play is a badass character, okay? Besides Dex, then you have the other characters in the show. Before we delve into character development and personalities, let's talk about the premise of the show. The premise is set in a possible near future. very realistic near future, if I might add. This one in particular revolves around genetically modified children. Nope, I am not talking about superpowers. Quite the opposite, actually. These are regular, normal children on the outside. However, when I say genetically modified, they were bioengineered in a lab with embryos and male sperm, okay? These kids are manufactured. For who, you might ask? None other than the upper class, the rich, the 1% in Korea. They want kids according to their measurements and parameters. That's where the shocking truth comes into play. So, where does this story go? Without giving away any spoilers, and that wasn't a spoiler, by the way, it is the main overarching design of the show. That's the overarching theme, right? The story revolves around these 4 kids, or maybe 5, I think. Well, the numbers increase as the show goes on. But there are kids who survive. Survive what, you might ask? Well, here comes the twist in the premise. I'm going to emphasize premise because this is all in the premise. I'm not giving away any spoilers. None of what I'm saying right now is a spoiler. This is all accessible before you even watch the show, okay? These kids, if they don't meet the requirements set by the parents and their parameters, they get discarded. Yep, you heard that right. The parents, according to the contract, the agreement, are allowed to refund their designed genetically modified children, and these kids are then discarded. And when I say discarded, I mean unalived. Yep. And that's where the story begins, because there's 4 or 5 kids that survive. How, you may ask? That's where I will leave it up to you to go and check out, because the story begins at the execution level. Right before these kids are executed, that's where the story begins. And I love a story that begins with impact, that begins with some type of cliffhanger, on the edge of your seat level type of cliffhanger, and then hooks you in and then continues. I love shows, movies, books, you name it, any form of sensory entertainment. I love impact, and this show does that. Hooked me in right at the beginning and then proceeded to continue hooking me right until the end of the show. Now, who's the bad person, you may ask? It's not just Dex. Like I said, he's one of the antagonists. The main antagonist is a doctor, or I believe she's a doctor. I couldn't tell you, but she's some type of scientist. I think so. Yeah, a scientist or doctor. And she puts on a front, obviously, as a lot of these villains do in a lot of these shows. She puts on a front, all innocent, right? Shows that she's goody two shoes, and then the mask rips off and her true colors emerge at some point, right? She's the one behind this whole, I would say, project or experiment, and she's trying her best to get these kids out into market and make it a legal process. That's all I'll say. Now, let's talk about these characters in the show. You've got, I believe you've got this one leader among the kids, right? She's the leader. I shouldn't say kids. They're adults, but compared to me, okay, I say kids because I'm an Ajashi. They're kids to me. All right. Anyone in their 20s, they're kids to me. I can't help it. Okay, that's just the way I see it. These kids, she's the leader, and then you have the other female in the group, and then you've got two other males. So they start off as 4, and then their numbers increase when they find other kids to rescue. And that's essentially what they do, right? And also try and survive because she's after them, right? This particular scientist, this doctor, is after these kids. So during this whole process, I noticed how these children change and develop. So they go from just trying to survive to being on the run, panicked, and then they develop and become more serious and more hell-bent on striking back, right? So you can see that as the show progresses. You can even see how the villains develop as well, because there's more than one, right? For the most part, the parents, I would call these parents villains too. And you'll see why. The characters were good. The story was amazing. I would say that 8 episodes, I don't know why these shows are so short, because sometimes I feel like the story is rushed and it's trying to get to the ending really fast. So the narrative is sort of, I would say, forced in some parts, right? And I felt that with this show. Not saying for all the episodes, but for some episodes, you could see how they were just trying to resolve things really fast. And one of the, I'm not going to tell you what exactly, but one of the plot twists was just so random and so sudden. I didn't feel like it was necessary, and I really felt like it would have made more sense towards the end of the last episode if that happened. Sort of anticlimactic, but you know, it works in my opinion. Again, this is just my opinion. It's not anybody else's. This is the world according to me. So that kind of made me go, huh? And I would also argue that the character that Dex played, while I found his character to be badass, and you can definitely see that he's kind of mastered the art of acting, because he's not, I'm pretty sure this is his debut role. He's not an actor. He's a participant in the reality series Singles Inferno, right? Solo Jio, that's the Korean name. And he's also the host in Singles Inferno after he participated and sort of graduated, so to speak, right? I'm putting it in quotes. And then he went on to become the host, or one of the hosts of the show. And so from that point, he found himself in acting. Now, why is that relevant? Because you can see that he still has potential to grow as an actor. I could see certain moments where the emotions were kind of forced, and it made some of the scenes a little awkward at certain points. So that was sort of for me. However, I do see his efforts, and I applaud him for that. The other actors in the show, the actresses in the show, fantastic job, right? And I believe one of the actors in the show passed away recently. I forget his name. I gotta look. Hold on. Let me look this up. Give me a second, because I owe you that much, right? I can't always be without any acting credits here. He was Song Young-kyu. Yes, Song Young-kyu. Yes. Rest in peace. Condolences to the family, and I hope that they find some peace, and I hope that he's found peace in his passing. And yeah, we'll leave it there. But overall, I think the show was pretty good. Like I said, it hooked me, aside from the minor defects, pun intended, in the show. So I will give this show a 7.25 out of 10. And understandably so, right? I knocked off a few points. Again, I felt some of the moments in the show, they were rushed, and I felt like they could have expanded on certain things in the show to kind of bring in more character, more flavor. But yeah, overall, pretty good. Action was good, on point, choreographed just right. None of it was unrealistic. I would say that the fight scenes were pretty well done. I would contribute there. So yeah, my review stands at 7.25 out of 10. That being said, if you like stuff like this, if you like the content that I put out, consider subscribing. All right, don't forget to smash the like button. Does me a favor, helps keep me motivated to continue bringing Daebak content. And I will see you all in the next episode without delay, okay? I promise that much. All right? Stay healthy, stay cool. Cheers. Peace.